I'm going to begin today's session working on this right hand region of the drawing. So the last two sessions we were working on this left hand side. But I'm not going to explain what I'm doing because I'm going to be doing the same thing that I did in the previous two sessions, and I feel like it would be a bit tedious to kind of go over that at normal speed. So I'm going to show the whole process, but I'm going to kind of get this up to this level of completeness via time lapse, so you can watch me work sped up. And once this is back up to the right level of detail to match this left hand side, then we'll go in and start working. So we will be working carrying this on in terms of detail, but I'll be sort of explaining the more complex aspects and just kind of speeding through the part which sort of repeats what we've already looked at. So you'll be able to see what I'm doing, but it'll be much more sped up, and I won't be talking while I'm doing it. So I'll get into working on this right hand section, and I'll be back as soon as that's done. So we're going to start working in a bit more detail in a smaller section now. I've kind of roughly got all this right hand side in. Maybe not quite as smooth as the left hand side, but definitely those tones are a bit more established now, now that I've worked on them. So we can go back to the left hand side and kind of again work kind of gradually across towards the right. And we're now going to be bringing it to a completion pretty much, and we'll do a little bit of tweaking later on. Here and there, but can pretty much go in and try to be as rendered and detailed as we possibly can get in kind of each section that we work on gradually. So I'm going to start top left hand corner, so we'll start working on this this wall, kind of tweaking it. I'm going to zoom in for this. So as I've said in the last couple of sessions, the reference is available to look at so you kind of know what I'm working on, but it's you can see a little bit more if I kind of zoom in while drawing. So probably this kind of, again, this sort of quadrant we're going to go for with the drawing. And just down a tad. Get the stick. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm just going to focus in. There you go, nice and crisp. And yeah, maybe just drop that down a little bit, the exposure. So yeah, let's go in and start rendering this out. So you need to get the tones up to the right, or get the tones balanced correctly, which is what we've been working on, before you can start to add detail. So I'm just getting my reference back up now. So you can see on the references, or the reference, primarily what we kind of want to work on is getting a little bit more sharpness in some places. So at the moment it's still a little bit fuzzy. That would include, say in this section here, I want to go back in and just kind of find the edge of these bits of paper. So at the moment they feel just a little bit too fuzzy, and I'll probably go maybe a little bit too light here, but that's fine. I can go back in with the pencil over the top once I've kind of crisped them out. And if I say erase too far over, I can just darken that as well. So got quite a lot of leeway in that regard. So that's a bit better. I'm just going to go back in with some pencil now. So I have to continually sort of smooth as I'm working. You usually need a slightly smoother basis in order to get detail. So without a bit more kind of smoothing out of your tones, you'll struggle to kind of, because I'm trying to get to a point where I can add what appears to be text on these bits of paper, text and images. But at the moment it's too patchy, so I have to go in and try to even the tones around it and even the tones in the paper out sufficiently that I can get the text to read from a distance, not necessarily looking at it really up close. Now I'm going to try to suggest, so this text, the sort of linearity of it, the way it's placed in the page, and then these little diagrams as well. I'm approaching it by just sort of blurring my eyes. Something like that. So I don't need tons of detail, I just need a suggestion of detail, and I can do the same thing on this other side. This one's a little bit smoother already actually, so I don't think I need to do quite so much on it. Possibly go in and lighten up this paper and shadow a little bit. So the text placement is the same on this other page, which the fact that they're the same sort of helps the diagram positioning and text placement, because that kind of repeating makes it seem like maybe it's printed material or something like that. So that's a lot better. Which takes me up to this little cast we've got on the wall. So first thing I'm going to do with that is going to work around the outside of it, so where it's casting a shadow on the wall, just here. And start to work a bit more inside it. And it's reasonably smooth, so this one I'm kind of more focusing on getting all the detail I need in. So I don't have to go for an enormous amount of detail, it's just sort of a slight refinement of each little element that we're working on. Which then brings us down to this other cast, which is on the wall. So again, I'm going to work on the dark side of it. Now the relationship placement's not actually exactly the same as in the reference, so that's fine. So that's not too bad for that. That hand as well. Might just do a slight pass over it. Just have a tiny bit of tone, and then just erase back out those bits I want to be brightest. It's always a nice little trick for kind of highlights or sections of drawings that you want to kind of pop off the rest of the piece. So I can go in and work on this lamp a little bit now, just kind of neatening, developing the form somewhat. Got a few more little lights bouncing off this lamp. Can go back to this left hand side now. I'm fairly happy with that lamp. We'll have a look at how everything's kind of looking from a distance as well, because obviously as you're looking up close, everything still feels relatively rough, but when we zoom out near the end, you get a better sense of how things have changed and how the detail reads from the distance, because partly what we're trying to do is get the detail to read well. Sort of viewed from a specific distance, it's called the viewing distance. So roughly where you're probably drawing from is your viewing distance for a piece like this. But sometimes it can be very far away, and you could design a larger painting with a viewing distance of sort of meters away, where the viewer is meant to stand at least kind of a few meters away from the piece. That's fairly standard for like big pieces that you see in galleries. With this screen, the main thing I'm actually going to go for is, it can be pretty much pure dark, so I can go a bit darker with it. But also I just want to sharpen it out a bit, so that's working on edges. Some stuff can be fuzzy, but a lot of stuff can be a lot sharper than it is. And adding sharper stuff in will make the fuzzier things, the softer things feel even softer, because it creates more contrast. If everything is sort of equally soft, the like softness doesn't work as well. You need something to compare it against and say, oh wow, that's, this is a sharp edge, so that's a soft edge, and that visual variety is much more interesting to engage with as a viewer. So we often go for that when we're drawing things. Generally, it's called edge variety, is what people kind of refer to when they're talking about it. Same thing with this keyboard. In the light I can kind of start to add some suggestions of key details, but we're not going to see loads of that in the dark, maybe just again like a little suggestion of them, regular placement of some darker shapes, but nothing super kind of detailed. And then we've got the important aspect at the top of this table, which is this shadow that sort of makes its way across all the surfaces. I'm not going to go any lower than this because this is about the point where I've zoomed into. So that's going to be our kind of extent for today. So in this little penumbra, sharper on this mouse, and also I'm going to try to find a little highlight on this mouse too. So this highlight's going to be bouncing off the light above, just a bright little point on it. Just modifying its form slightly there. And then we come to this little box. Final thing we'll work on is this little box and skull. This is probably the most interesting part of the drawing to work on because there's a lot of great objects. There are some nice reflections in some other parts of it. These objects are definitely really interesting to work with. Also got a little bit of a reflection actually just spotted on the top of this table, which is quite nice. Obviously that also lines up with that little table lamp. So all of those, everything kind of needs to interact with these light sources. The more that it does so, the better it'll read generally. So I'm just adding a little bit of darker tone underneath here. I'll push that a bit darker. It'll go darker next week actually. This section, I'm going to stop at the point of the skull. I was just dropping down there a bit to get the difference between the front of the table there and that highlight. Then we've just got this little skull. It's not going to be as detailed as a skull would be really up close, but I'm going to try to get it, capture it. It's obviously going to have these shadows. be illuminated on the other side. Just about there with it. I'll put some little extra highlights on it as well. Change its shape over the top slightly. Just got this little top of the box. And yeah, we're pretty much there, I think. So it's sort of loosely sketched in this little skull. It's obviously not super detailed, but a bit more detail than there was. Same goes for everything else. I'm going to zoom out now so you can just sort of see the difference. So just a little bit more clarity in that section. You can see how it's kind of altered from the rest of the piece. I'll just tilt down a little bit there. You can see the difference between these less finished areas and that more finished area that I've just been working on. But yeah, that's pretty much it for what you need to be doing up to this stage. So we'll kind of be carrying on sort of down there, maybe across a little bit to the left, to the right next week, and then maybe try to push through to finish up on the right here. We're not going to have to go quite as detailed on the right just because the left is kind of a bit nearer to us, and you tend to make the portions of the drawing closer to you kind of more detailed than the parts that are further away. It creates a little bit of a sort of staggering of detail, which is nice. But yeah, that's it for this week. As always, follow us on YouTube. There's videos from myself and other great tutors and interviews and all sorts. And you can click the link through to OCAD and CHS to find out more about the different art courses that we offer, paid art courses where you can get more in-depth kind of help from tutors like myself and others. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today, and I'll see you guys soon.